welcome to the first episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. My name is Emmanuel Olawale. I'm an attorney based in Columbus, Ohio. I'm also the host of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. So I'm going to be introducing my guest to you. Her name is Jummy Olawale. She's a therapist and she's also a podcaster and the CEO of Focused Counseling. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jummy Olawale. I'm a therapist. I'm the owner of Focused Counseling Clinic. It's based in Grandview, where we see people that struggle with anxiety, depression, marital issues, other stress-related and trauma-related issues. I'm also the host of Life, Love, and Therapy podcast and the host of the show that I do every Thursday night called Let's Talk with Jummy on Facebook.
On this episode of Legal Angle, we're going to be talking about the mental impact of COVID-19. But before we get into that, we'll be remiss if we don't also talk about the pressing issues that has been in the news this past week. We all woke up on Tuesday to the news or the video of the death of George Floyd in Minnesota. He was a black man who was supposed to be arrested by the police. And, he was arrested, he was handcuffed. And instead of them to put him in the back of their squad car to transport him to wherever they were supposed to, an officer called Derek Chauvin knelt down on his neck and suffocated him to death. In reaction to that, there has been protests all across the country. The legal angle to this is the fact that the officer was not arrested initially. It took a few days, it took some protest before he was even arrested and charged with third-degree murder. As the days goes on, there have been more protesting even in many states and different cities and more destruction of properties. What do you think is responsible for this emotional response from the public?
The history of America, the history of race in the United States has always been very hard because, especially for Black people, especially for African Americans, brown and Black folks. And the experience of Black and brown folks in the United States is one that is very different from their contemporaries, from their white citizens. And this particular issue that just occurred recently that's taken over the news has caused so much anguish, I think, within the Black and brown communities because it is very representative of what we have been going through for a long, long time. And it's been caught on camera. And I think people are outraged because it took so long for justice to occur. It took so long for the police officer to be arrested. And for many brown and Black folks, we're asking the same question, how come it took so long? So I think that frustration has just boiled over because this is a very common occurrence within the Black community where the Black community is often over-policed. And now with the death of this young man, it is causing so much outrage because of the trauma within the Black community.
Do you think the response to it has to do with bottled up trauma or bottled up anger?
I think it's both. You can find anger in trauma. There's so many different ways that we all respond to negative experiences, to traumatic episodes. Some of us get angry, some of us get sad, some of us get depressed, some of us get anxious. And so we are all going to be responding to traumatic events differently. Can you find anger and trauma together? Yes. Can anger be in trauma? Yes.
Do you think that the COVID-19 lockdown has to do with the reaction of the people, or is it just like a combination of all these factors? Because there have been several deaths even during the COVID-19, but this one is so different because it was caught on camera. Normally, it would be like a police shot a guy, but this one was a slow, systematic death. Could that have impacted how people are reacting to this? Or maybe it's just a combination of all this bottled up frustration and anger?
I think any and all of those could be true. One thing the Black community knows well is being over police. One thing the Black community knows well is excessive force used by the police. One thing the Black community knows well is violence against Black bodies. And so this just encapsulates what that looks like. The knee on someone's neck. That is representative of how a lot of Black and brown folks have felt in this country for a long time. And the callousness of it and the look on that police officer's face where it was just so cavalier, like it was just another day on the job. I think many of the people within the white community too are very upset about that it just seems like it's not a big deal to just kill and take the life of a human being. And I think all of those things put together with just the past experience of race relations in the United States, I think all of those things come together. It's really just boiling over.
Yeah, I do agree with you, because the callousness, the manner at which he just squeezed out the life in that man, because he kneeled on his neck for over almost 10 minutes. And by the 7th minute, the guy died. He was pleading for his life, was crying for his mama. He was telling them he couldn't breathe. And even the witnesses were asking him that, what are you doing? You're going to kill that man. Can you get off his neck? But they just ignored it. What do you also think could have been responsible for this kind of callousness, this lack of empathy, this lack of sympathy for another human life?
That is a question for the ages. What makes someone so afraid when they see a Black man? What makes someone so afraid to think of a Black body as dangerous? What makes someone get a call and they go to a park and they say they see someone with a gun and it's just a little boy in the park, and within a few seconds the police come and dispatch and then they shot him and killed him?
That's Tamir Rice.
Yes, that's Tamir Rice. And so I think the original sin of America is it's racism, whether it's in the genocide of the original people that were here, in the native people, or whether it's in the enslavement of Africans. The original sin of the United States is racism. And I think that the United States has really struggled to grapple with this because of its history. I used to live in England, and race is still an issue there, but it's different. It's very different. And in the way that the police relate with Black people, it's not at this level where you are walking down the street and you're afraid that if somebody calls the police that you will get shot. It's not in the same category at all.
And the reality is that as a Black man living in the United States, you go out there, a routine encounter with the police could be your last encounter. And now it's getting to a stage where even an encounter with just any civilian that is not Black could lead to you being dead. All they have to think is that you're at the wrong place. Even you could be at the right place at the right time. If they think that you don't belong there, that could lead to your death. Even though this is all just for Floyd, I believe that it's a combination of the Aubrey's death, Breonna Taylor's death, and now this. And this one just happens to be on tape. And possibly, maybe if the officer was arrested sooner, we probably wouldn't have all this mass protest. So maybe just ignoring the plight and the anger of Black people caused this public and mass anger. Well, what do you think?
I concur. You can't ignore when people are suffering. It's going to boil over. You can't keep stifling people's voices. It's going to boil over. People are going to find a way to express themselves. Human beings are not built to be pushed down, and they want to come up. They want to have a voice. And so I think that the way that what happened to Mr. Floyd, the way that it was handled was awful. It was awful. I think leadership did a terrible job. We can all see what happened on tape. And I think that's another frustration within the Black and brown community, is that it's gotten to a point where even the things that you're able to see or the things that you're able to hear, people are going to tell you that's not what is happening. That's not what is, that's not what you're seeing. It's a form of gaslighting. We have a cultural level of gaslighting going on right now. And so even we know that we can see something on tape, we can hear it, on tape, and people will deny it, and these people will still be exonerated. And it happened a few months back where a young man was jogging, minding his own business, And some white guys decided that he didn't belong in the area. The level of hubris, that white supremacy thinking, I think is a problem in the United States, where a white person thinks that they have a right to a black body. They have a right to ask you for your name, for your identity, and that they can feel comfortable to call the police to enforce that for them. And that's what happened in the park with that gentleman that was bird watching and asked that lady to put a leash on her dog. And she said, I'm going to call the police to tell them that a black man is threatening my life. So that sense of comfort that a lot of white people feel in being able to call the police and they will come to their aid, it's not the same level of comfort that black people feel to be able to call the police to come to their aid. Because black people are afraid if you call the police, I might die. But for white people, they feel like if they call the police, they'll be protected. Until we're able to have these conversations, and the people at the top, whether in the police, within the white community, within the black community, until we're able to really have this truthful conversation and understand where the pain is for us, for the black and brown folks, I don't see. I don't see it. Yeah.
So how do we as black people, African Americans, immigrants, how can we handle this fear and anxiety that we experience whenever we go out there? We are like an endangered species. When we go out there, you never know if it's going to be your last if you have the wrong encounter with the wrong person.
I remember when we were in England the last time, you went jogging. And I remember when you got back what you said, to be able to go jogging in England, it's like when you are an American, you are afraid because you are in an unknown area, and there's that sense of discomfort that is within you. And I think as black people, we walk around with that sense of discomfort here in the United States. So as a black person, how do I get through that? It's just being aware. It's being aware of my body. It's being aware of my voice, because you have to be careful how you interact with other people without being labeled as the angry black woman. You have to be careful in how you express yourself in a passionate way. When, I have any interaction with the police, is watching where my hand is, watching my tone of voice, watching their body language, talking down myself, because I don't see what else you can tell a black person at this point. Don't yell, don't argue, don't wear a hoodie, don't have Skittles, don't sleep in your own house and get shot. It feels like there's nowhere you can go that you can be safe. So you have to be very aware of your body, of your surroundings. And even if you're dealing with a white stranger or a white police officer, how you handle and carry yourself, because you just pray that you get home that night.
Is there a way that the authorities or the community leaders can manage this communal rage and anger?
I think how you handle rage, communal rage and anger, is by calling it out and calling it what it is. I think it is irresponsible for the people in power, and I'm talking about the police, when people are out there peacefully protesting, that you go out in riot gear, you go out macing people, you go out, throwing tear gas. How does that help the situation? It doesn't help. You let people peacefully protest and call it out and have the police chiefs come out. I've seen police chiefs in Westerville. I've seen police chiefs in other suburbs right here in Ohio, posting on Facebook saying, we stand on behalf of Judge Floyd. We think what happened to him was horrible. That is what people want to hear. They want people who are powerful in the police. They want the governors, they want the mayors to come out and speak out against this. And if decisive action had been taken when this thing occurred, where it was swift, it wasn't just that he was fired, but that they had gone ahead and arrested him, I don't think it would have come to this. And when people were upset, I think if people were out there, whether it's the police chief in Minneapolis and in these other cities and the mayors and stuff, if they come out and come out with the people who are protesting and saying, we hear you, we see you, we're sorry, we're mourning with you, that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, people want to feel validated. They want to feel heard. And if you're not going to help them to be heard, then they're not interested in whatever you have to say. Because at the end of the day, you knew this man did what he did. You didn't arrest him for so long. And now you arrested him. There's still the other cops there. And we're still not sure what's going to happen. Is justice going to be done? Because we've seen this play out before where people were arrested and eventually they were let go because other people were understanding of the fact that they were afraid for their lives. So we just have to wait and see. I think it's been handled terribly.
It's been handled terribly because, and in this case too, it's just the callousness. He killed that man in slow motion. And everyone saw it. There's no way that you have any iota of empathy within you
Yeah.
that you wouldn't get mad, that you wouldn't see that this is wrong.
Yeah.
And the fact that they didn't do anything, they just fired him. So all they had to do was lose his job when a man lost his life. So
Exactly.
they handled it terribly. I think a lot of people are actually grieving. They're grieving that death because it's like we all saw that man make his last breath. And what made it even worse is the fact that most of the states are just reopening. So within a few weeks, possibly that's the first week of reopening. And now we have two incidents. One was that woman in Central Park, and the other one was the death of that young man. So if the authorities will do what you're recommending them to do, talk to people's grief, talk to their fear, talk to their anger, hopefully it will calm people down. But you have some people out there who are just saying that, you know what, move on.
You can't respond to pain in that way. Think about the people who have been protesting, going to government houses and with their guns and protesting. What did these governors do? What did they do? They were like, they have a right to protest. We understand your frustration. They validated them. The police officers were there. They were not wearing riot gear. They were not macing anybody, while some of them were yelling in their faces in the midst of a pandemic with a microorganism, something that could kill the police officers who were standing there, putting their lives at risk. But what happened? The police did not mace anybody. The police did not go out in riot gear. They let them come, they vented their anger, and the governors are saying, you have a right to protest, you have a right to feel this way, we're just trying to make sure that everybody is safe. They were trying to talk them down so that they wouldn't escalate. That is how you lead. When people are upset, when people are angry, you listen to the pain point. And the pain point of African Americans, and not just African Americans, I've never seen this amount of even white people be so outraged themselves by what's happened, because for the first time for many white people, they were able to see. I have seen videos of other white people saying, I am so sorry that it's taken me this long to see it. Yes. Now I see it. Like, we're thankful that you are all finally seeing it. Thank you very much. But if our leaders are not calling it what it is, and we're going to pretend that, oh no, this was just an unfortunate incident, nobody's going to listen to that, because we know the truth. We know what we go through within our communities. We know that we have to raise our children and tell them how to behave when they're dealing with authority, when they're dealing with the police. That is the burden that we have to carry as Black people. And so if the governors are not out there, if the mayors are not out there, if the chiefs of police are not out there speaking against this and making sure that they prosecute, this particular police officer, I don't see much peace moving forward.
Now let's move on to because the country has been shut down since March, and we're just gradually reopening. How do you think it has affected the mental health of a lot of people?
Oh man, when you take away the things that people will normally use to manage their own mood, to regulate their bodies, it's going to cause a lot of mental distress. So we're talking about things as simple as touch. Maybe you see your coworkers, you give them a hug, or you give them a tap on the shoulder. Maybe you go and eat lunch with friends. Maybe you go out to the gym and you're able to work out. You go out to a restaurant because you're tired of cooking. All these simple things, being able to hang out with family and friends and neighbors, being able to see people, touch people, use all your 5 senses. When those things are taken from you, it will impact your mental health because the brain doesn't know what's happening. So I think that this pandemic has been really hard for many people because we have taken away the things that they need. Even if you're having a hard time at home, you can at least escape to work and focus on work and vice versa. But now everything is done in the same space.
So do you think it has caused a lot of people a lot of frustration and anxiety and possibly maybe depression?
I think that could happen to people when you take away a lot of the things that they use to self-regulate. When you have a virus that is killing people, I think we're at over 100,000 people now that have died alone in the United States. When people think about their lives and the lives of their loved ones, maybe their neighbor who is elderly or their parent or their grandparents or their children, it can cause a lot of anxiety for sure.
In your experience as a therapist, has there been an increase in people seeking mental health treatment?
In my own practice, I have had calls. I'm not going to say that there's been that much of an increase, but I expect that there will be. I think that when people are really struggling, when they are dealing with a lot, the first thing they do is just hunker down and try to let it pass. And then when things pass a little bit, then they can start thinking about, Okay, what do I need to do to get better? So oftentimes in crisis, just imagine if there's a war, for example, people are not going to be going to a therapist during wartime. Their first instinct is to survive. And then once they've gone through that survival and they've come down just a little bit for them to be able to think about, okay, what can I do now to help myself? Then they can go to therapy. I'm having, people still calling in for therapy, but I'm not having that onslaught yet, but I expect that to be coming in the next few weeks.
I can actually relate with that, because what I tell people too is that when all this is settled, as far as the legal angle, there will be massive amount of bankruptcy filings, massive amount of lawsuit and litigation related to COVID-19. People will sue businesses, hospitals, and other places, even in regards to a lot of contracts that were terminated as a result of the shutdown. So I guess the same thing also applies to mental health, seeking therapy, and seeking treatment. For people who have lost their jobs, who have been followed, and who have anxiety about how to make ends meet, what can you tell them for them to manage that financial, mental stress?
It's the same thing that I, say to people when they come to me in therapy is, one, just acknowledge their pain and say, it is okay that you are stressed out. It is okay that you are frustrated. It is okay that you are anxious. I mean, how can you not be? You are having a normal human reaction. If you're finding yourself that you're having difficulty sleeping, you're having difficulty concentrating, you're having difficulty being productive, that is a natural reaction to danger. And so we first want to acknowledge that and say, it is okay. How do we move you through that? Well, let's talk about your sleeping patterns. Let's make sure that we work on getting you to bed at the right time and making sure that you're having adequate sleep. Because if you're not sleeping well, that is really the base of everything. You're not giving your body the best chance. Okay, what are your outlets that I know our state is open now, but back then, what are your outlets? Are you able to go for a walk? Are you able to go for a run? Are you able to call a friend? Are you able to Skype a friend? I've seen people watch movies together on Zoom. And so really trying to find other ways that you can take care of yourself, maybe do meditation, get into yoga and things like that. Those are the kind of conversations that I tend to have with people to help them and just understand that we're all, struggling with this. Of course, in different ways, because some of us came into this with different problems, but you are not alone, even though it feels alone. And that the problems are there. You're having financial problems. Those things are real. Those things are legitimate. And those things make you feel unsafe. And that's okay. But once we're able to help you, regulate your body, then we can talk about all the other things that might be available for you in terms of resources that can help you out, and really how you reimagine your future. Because if you're in a financial ruin, that was not your plan for 2020.
Correct.
And so you are having to reshape your expectations of yourself, of your family, and of your future, and rebuild again. And all the hopes and dreams that you had attached to 2020 and by now in 2020 that you have not been able to achieve, understand that it's going to require you to grieve them, and that it's okay that you are grieving, because for every change there is loss, and for every loss there has to be grieving. So helping you sort of cope with that grieving would typically be my primary work.
So, grieving. So right now, a lot of people are grieving the loss of their jobs, the loss of finances. Is it possible that people are grieving the loss of pre-COVID-19 normal life?
Absolutely. I can say that I'm grieving the loss of normal life, pre-COVID-19. Pre-COVID-19, many of us came into 2020 vision, 2020 plan. People were prophesying about 2020. Some people had vision boards for 2020. And we're all grieving the loss of normalcy. We're all grieving the loss of predictability. Normalcy, predictability, familiarity, those are things that make us feel safe. And anything that is not familiar, anything that doesn't feel like we can predict, make us anxious. And so how can we not be anxious? How can we not feel depressed? How can we not feel unsettled and restless? It's completely normal. Just understand that this is what grieving looks like. And grieving has so many different components within it. So one minute you're happy, the next minute you feel grateful that you're alive, the next minute you're like, oh my gosh, you're disappointed, the next minute you're embarrassed, the next minute you're sad, you're angry. The ups and downs of emotions, they're all part of grieving.
Almost everyone in the world right now, we're grieving what used to be. And chances are, a lot of people will never return to pre-COVID-19 life. Some will recover, some will get better, but some will not. So that's the reality of that. But then how can one accept that fact? How can one accept that reality?
That's the hard part, because when you use the word accept, when we talk about grieving, there are 5 stages to grieving, and the last one is acceptance. And so to get to acceptance means that you've done the work of going through all the other stages. And it's not even linear. You can get to acceptance and come back to denial. And so to get to acceptance takes time. It takes you being able to say to yourself, okay, I see that this has happened, and what I wanted, what I hoped is not going to come, but I can still hope again, and I can still dream again. The person that built that business that went under can still build again. The person that had that house, that was able to, buy that house, can still buy again. And so how do you reimagine? How do you get creative? How do you start thinking about, when this is over, what are the things that I need to do, that I need to pursue to be able to get something different? You have to be willing to dream differently. You have to be willing to get creative, but you can't do that and grieve at the same time. And so you need to give yourself that space to get angry, to get mad, to get sad, to get depressed, to get worried, because that makes you human. You're not a computer. You're not just going to go and say, well, it happened. I've lost my job. I filed for bankruptcy, and that is it, and move work. So give yourself permission to feel, lean into those feelings. And then when you are on the other side, you can start dreaming again, start rebuilding, because you still have life, so you can still rebuild. But it's like you said, a lot of people are not going to financially survive this, and it's going to change their lives drastically, and it's going to have long-lasting impact on their lives. And we have to figure out ways to support those people within the community. But yeah, you're grieving. It's hard to accept things when you're still in the thick of it.
Give yourself space to feel your emotion. Give yourself space to express how you feel. That is it. And now that, states are reopening, countries are reopening, we're back to not even a post-COVID-19 life, because it's still out there. And now we have this fear, this anxiety of dealing with strangers. No more handshakes, no more hugs, no more trying to gather in a closed room or, hall. How do we handle that anxiety or fear of strangers?
That is a hard thing, because, we can't go to church. We haven't been to church since March. And we miss that type of fellowship, being with people, being with friends. And so when we are dealing with this, it is normal and natural to be anxious. You have to follow the CDC guidelines so that you can keep yourself alive. You want to have that 6-foot distance. You want to wear your mask whenever you're out there, maybe in the stores. That anxiety that you feel is your body trying to keep you alive. Okay. And so I don't believe in fighting that anxiety. If I'm out and I'm in a more crowded space and I'm worried that maybe the next person near me might have COVID, that is a real thing. It is not, it's not, me being psychotic. It's not me, being removed from reality. That is my reality. And so that anxiety you feel in those public settings, that's your body trying to keep you alive. And what I would say to you is this: breathe through it, but don't try to fight it, because there is no fighting it. I'm going to go out there and I'm still going to be nervous whenever I'm next to someone, because I don't know what they have and I don't want to catch COVID and I don't want to take it home to my family. And that is a very normal fear to have, and understand that our bodies are there to keep us alive. Yeah. So that's okay.
Yeah. Someone just asked, how do we handle the anxiety aspect of it?
It depends. Anxiety is a normal thing. Right? Like, you never want to get rid of anxiety. When someone comes to me and they say, Jimmy, I struggle with anxiety, I want to eradicate it, I'm like, no, you don't want that. It's like saying, I want to remove the smoke alarm from my house. Anxiety is there for a reason, for evolutionary reasons. It's what tells you, oh, when you went over there was a lion there, so maybe you don't want to take that path the next time, right? So it's there for a reason. You don't want to get rid of it. The smoke alarm is there when there's smoke, right? To keep you safe. But if you take out the battery and there's smoke, you might not know. But the smoke alarm isn't the issue. When the smoke alarm goes off, this is where anxiety that is manageable versus anxiety that is not manageable is different. When the smoke alarm goes off, which is the anxiety, you need to go and check. You need to go and see, is it that someone is making bacon? Is it that somebody is making salmon and the smoke is coming out? Or is it that the house is burning down? And those things are going to have different reactions. So if it's just the bacon, just to open the door and let the air come in, nobody's going to die. But if the house is literally on fire, you're going to get everybody out because you don't want anybody to die. And I think there's a difference between having a normal level of anxiety that is manageable because you can check in and go, oh, what is going on? Oh, I'm out here. My heart is racing. I'm feeling a little more tense because somebody's near me. That's a normal anxiety. But an anxiety that is unmanaged is the one that is crippling. Right? The one that you can't even get out of your house, that your heart is always racing, that you're always ruminating over, bad things happening, that you're always having stomach issues. Now we're moving into a disorder because a disorder means that it's impacting your life and your functionality, right? There is no order. There is a disorder. And so that is different. And with that one, if that's what you have, you probably want to see a therapist. You probably want to talk to your doctor because there's so many things that you can do to help with your anxiety.
Thank you. I love the way you handle that. You said anxiety itself is a smoke alarm. I recently finished reading a book and the title is The Gift of Fear. Fear itself has a purpose.
Yes.
Anxiety has a purpose. It's meant to keep you safe. But sometimes we get that, we ignore that smoke alarm. So sometimes we just ignore our own anxiety. So anxiety itself is not that bad. It's how we manage it. As long as it doesn't affect our functionality, we should embrace our anxiety. I hear someone says that coronavirus doesn't care about CDC guidelines. Because we can still follow all the guidelines. We can keep 6 feet apart because this thing is new. That's why they call it the novel coronavirus. There are some people that will still follow everything and can still get infected. How can we handle that kind of mental frustration, knowing that it's still out there? It's an unknown enemy. We don't know how to fight it. There's no vaccine out yet. There's no treatment. How can one handle that kind of uncertainty?
Human beings in general, we suck at handling uncertainty. All right, because uncertainty, again, means unsafe, right? I often say to people, if something isn't predictable, if something isn't familiar, the brain is going to register it as bad. And we can look at history. We can look at even what just happened, with these shootings where people are afraid about what they don't know. Black people are in their own space. White people are in their own space. Our schools are much more segregated now. And so we're not getting to know one another. And when we don't get to know one another, we're going to assume the worst of the other because I don't know you. I don't know that just because you have a different color of skin does not mean that we don't like the same food and the same movies and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So anything that has to do with unfamiliarity, anything that has to do with not being able to predict always feels very scary to us. Yes. And that's why I think COVID is also scary because it's a novel virus. We don't know how it's going to be. And so being able to work on ourselves, being able to live in ambiguity is one of the things that I hope that a lot of people can work on personally in their lives.
So what advice do you have for people struggling with mental health issues even before the pandemic? And it's also likely that maybe the pandemic has, exacerbate their issues.
So if somebody already is struggling with a mental health disorder, I am hoping that that person is linked with their own therapist or their own psychiatrist or something of that nature, because I am certain that loneliness is going to make it worse. I am certain that unpredictability is going to make it worse. Being at home and not being able to have those channels where you are able to meet other people is going to make it worse. So what I would say to someone that is already struggling with that is, I need you to make your mental health a priority. I need you to find yourself a therapist. I need you to go and talk to your doctor. I need you to get onto your insurance website and go search for what your plan covers and how much it is, and also to find somebody who is in network that can see you for therapy. Because these conditions worsen mental health. These conditions worsen physical health because you can't even go to the gym. You can't do things. And so if you already have a mental health disorder, you definitely need to make sure that you are seeing a therapist, because a lot of therapists are online now. Like, I only see clients online. I don't see anybody in person. So the same way that we're having to deal with the lack of predictability of COVID, because as a virus, it's acting in different ways, we also have to understand that we're going to have to shift our thinking about what it means to be able to have mental health help, and that it doesn't have to be in person for it to be effective. So if you have that issue, I strongly suggest that you seek out help, because that just predisposes you to your mental health worsening. The same way that, diabetes will predispose you to a worse outcome if you were to contract COVID.
Yes. And there are people out there who before COVID-19 are single. They're looking for a partner. How can single people date in the age of COVID-19, especially when the testing is not even universal? Because there's no way for you to know whether the stranger you're going to meet or the person that you're going to meet, whether they are COVID-free.
People are out here and dating, they're utilizing apps. So with COVID-19, when we're under the lockdown, you could not socialize. You couldn't go to church and meet that cute girl or meet that cute guy. You couldn't go into a concert or a club or something and meet anybody. So now a lot of it had to move to the dating apps. And how you date with, under COVID-19 is dating apps, because you're not going to see anybody. So I strongly encourage you to go on dating apps, right? And somebody's going to be like, really? Now, but when you go on those dating apps, you have to be very honest with yourself. Understand, just imagine yourself as a fisherman. With dating apps, you're literally throwing a wide old blanket into the ocean. And when you do that, what are you going to get? You're going to get all manners of things. You're not just going to get fish. You're going to get nails. You're going to get bags. You're going to get tissue. And so when you get on dating apps, I think this is where people get frustrated on dating apps, is that they meet a lot of people that are like, oh my goodness, this is weird. This is strange. Well, it's a dating app. Okay. You are throwing a net into the wide ocean and you're going to get a lot of things. But all you need is one, right? You only need one. If you're finding that you're getting frustrated because you're getting a lot of people that you don't want to date, just remember it's a wide net.
So when they cast the net out there, they're going to catch a lot of
things.
Frogs, toads, but maybe a few sharks.
Algae.
So it's not predictable. So my next question is, I can understand the app dating and the virtual dating. How about people who wants to feel physical dating, meet people in person? Because you'll be very surprised, and some of the things you see on those dating apps, they are the virtual reality or virtual representation of people.
Yeah.
So how do you get to know people to the point where you might possibly want to make the relationship serious?
I would say make a Google number. If you don't want somebody to have your own personal number and you're on a dating app, you can just create a Google number where it will be the phone number where they can call you. So you can have phone calls. Create a new email that you only use for your dating apps. And you guys can do Zoom calls and you can do FaceTime. So there are ways that you can continue to communicate with someone that is outside of the app itself so that you can get to know them better. Maybe you can cook together. Maybe you can watch a movie together. You can do that on Zoom. So there are a lot of things that you can do. Maybe you might not be physically present with each other, but you can definitely do it online.
So what you're basically recommending is that people can kiss by Bluetooth.
Kiss by Bluetooth.
Wi-Fi relationship. So I'm talking about, even after building all that, how can they handle the anxiety of meeting physically? It seems that you're recommending that people should kiss by Bluetooth or have a Wi-Fi relationship or some kind of parasocial relationship. How can they translate that to, because at some point they will want to physically meet.
Yeah.
How can they handle that anxiety and the fear of the unknown? Coronavirus is worse than HIV. You can contract it even without touching. So for people who are single, they want to meet people. How can they do that? After even doing all the Bluetooth, parasocial meeting and communication, I don't know, what advice do you have for them?
The coronavirus does not care that you want to meet with people. Okay? Coronavirus doesn't care what your physical desires are. We're talking about adults here. So you can do whatever you want. If you want to, under this conditions, that you want to go and meet with people and you want to kiss in real life and get that feel, have at it. So all I'm going to say is just be safe. You can't recreate physical touch. You really can't do that. So, if you want to go have a date, the state of Ohio is already open. People are going to restaurants. I would say, maybe meet outside, try to have your 6 foot distance, have ice cream, go for a walk, maybe go for 6 foot coffee, go for a run, go for a walk together, things like that they'll be outside and can, sort of minimize risk of transmission of the virus. But beyond that, coronavirus doesn't care if you want to have a real kiss.
I think with wide testing, with people being able to have access to testing, some of this problem can be solved, even in the absence of vaccine. Because if you are being regularly tested and you're not positive, and the other person also can, show proof that they're negative
today.
Exactly. Maybe you guys will get tested shortly before you meet. It will reduce that anxiety. Let's move to people with younger children. How do you communicate the fear of this virus to them? How do you handle their mental stress? Because children are also going through their own stress right now because they've been locked up at home even longer than parents. They've missed their friends, they've missed their teachers, they've missed at least half of the school year. How can parents manage their children's stress?
Yeah, you have to definitely be cognizant of their age and how you have these conversations with them so that you're not, building so much anxiety in them and a lot of fear. I encourage you to ask them questions. How are you doing? You must miss your friends. You must miss your teachers. How what are the things that you miss about being in school? And just validating those things and finding ways to engage them, to play with them, to do things that are fun with them. We tend to talk to our children about it. We ask them how they're doing, how are they feeling, and we are also honest about it. Like, yeah, mommy misses seeing her friends. Mommy misses hugging her friends. Mommy misses being able to go to work. I'm sure this must be hard for you, having to see mommy and daddy every single day and not being able to get away from them. So just normalizing how they feel. A lot of times that's what kids need, is just for them to know that adults are willing to listen. If you have access to their friends, parents, reach out to them and see if they can FaceTime each other, if they can Skype each other, if they can Zoom each other, so that they can at least be able to see their friends. That's something that we've also tried.
Yeah, you give access to children so that they can talk to their friends and talk to their colleagues. Yeah, and there are people in relationships, marriages who are having problems just because they've been stuck at home with a partner for so long. What advice would you have for people like that?
If people were struggling already with marital issues prior to COVID, it's only going to make it worse because now they're stuck with each other. And like you were saying earlier, with the financial stressors, with the environmental stressors, with the unpredictability of this COVID and other people dying, there are people whose family members have died during this. It's only going to exacerbate any issue. Even if it's little, it's only going to blow it up. So during this time, I encourage people to just have a lot of grace in their relationships right now. Understand that we're in the midst of a pandemic. And because we're in the midst of a pandemic, we're all going to be grieving differently. We're all going to be reacting to what's in front of us differently. And so if you feel like your partner is not speaking or not being very understanding, I would just wait and let's ride this thing out first before you make any drastic decisions about your relationship, because we are in a very difficult time and we're all trying to figure out the best way to handle it. And we don't have a book that would teach us how to do that. And so if you have more grace for yourself and you have more grace for your partner and for your children, if you have less of an expectation of yourself and of your partner and of your children, it will make things go smoothly. Because the world we used to live in pre-COVID is no longer the world we live in now. Life has changed. And because life has changed, it's going to require us to use, different tools. We can't use the same old tools and expect that it's going to be very effective.
That is deep. You can't use the same old tool and expect a different result in a new world. Wow, that is profound. And COVID-19, the shutdown, the being stuck at home with the same person, it has yielded two different results. To some people or to some couple, it made their relationship better. To others, it drew them apart. That those that are considering maybe breaking up or getting a divorce after all this is said and done. What can you say to people like that, as a therapist and a marriage counselor?
Yeah, I mean, I think the same thing, still stands is you need to think about that partner in terms of how they used to function pre-COVID, right? So if pre-COVID, they were not very good at listening, they were not responsible, they were not engaged, they were not helpful. COVID just made it worse, right? COVID just brought up what has always been, you're in a very different category. But if pre-COVID, your partner was supportive, things were fine for most of the time. And now they are reacting in a way that is making you so upset because you're like, is this how you deal with crises? You've got to be careful about judging that because we are all going to react differently to different crises. It doesn't make us good people. It doesn't make us great people. It doesn't make us bad people. Different isn't always deficient. And so having a little bit of grace for that person is going to be essential so that you're not making a bad decision over a pandemic. It's a pandemic, people. Okay. This is something that is affecting the entire world. And because of that, we are all, dealing with it differently. But if we're talking about people who have had long-standing issues in their relationships, whether the person wasn't helpful, they were not a good listener, they didn't help with the kids, they didn't help with the house, they didn't pay bills, they can't keep a job. This is a time for you to make a decision in your life about, at the end of the day, when you are in a situation where things are really bad, can you rely on this person? Is this your person? Can you lean back and know that they will catch you? And if they've always been the person that is not reliable, okay, and they're showing themselves to not be reliable, this is a time for you to really speak to yourself and say, what is going to be in the best interest of me moving forward? You've got to be really smart about it. There's a book that I usually recommend for people they're not sure how they want to go about it. And that one is called Too Good to Stay or Too Bad to Leave. It's a great book that will really help you walk through that decision making.
Thank you. I picked something up from what you just said. You said difference doesn't mean deficient. So as long as you can handle the differences. Then there are people who maybe throughout the shutdown have struggled with loneliness because they live alone, they're single. How can they manage it so that loneliness itself doesn't translate to feeling overwhelmingly alone?
Being at home, being stuck in the house, not having touch, not having friends, hits so many different levels. I once heard an interview by the former Surgeon General, that's it. And he wrote about loneliness, and he talks about loneliness being something that impacts people depending on the type of relationships that they have. And that you can have relationships with family that love you and that can check one side of loneliness, or you can have relationships with people who are intimate and that can check another side of loneliness. And then you can have relationship with friends and that checks another side of loneliness. So those three things are important in terms of, feeling not lonely. So if you have a partner, okay, and you desire to have a partner, and you also have a really good relationship with your family, and you also have really good friendships, those are things that really guard against loneliness. Now think about those three things and think about the impact of COVID. You can't see your family. You can be with them. You can see your friends. And if you're also single, it's reminding you that you are alone. Right. And so if you're already single and you don't live with your family and you also maybe you don't have a lot of friends, or maybe you don't get to see your friends, that can really impact you, in a really hard way. And so what I say to people is you really want to make sure that you start building those friendships, because some people don't come from good families. Some people don't have friends. And if you happen to not have friends, I really encourage you right now to start working on developing friendships. Start reaching out to people that you normally don't reach out to, and use COVID as an excuse. Hey, I know we've all been dealing with this crazy pandemic. I just want to check in on how you're doing, and use, this opportunity to build friendships so that you are not missing out on all three things. You don't only have an intimate relationship, you also don't have friends, and you don't have good family members. Those three things will wipe you out. So, at least work on one, at least engage with your friends, at least engage with, if it's family, engage with your family. And those are some of the ways that you can definitely help with loneliness. But if you have family, you have friends, and you want to be in an intimate relationship and you're not in one, you're not crazy for feeling lonely. That is a part of your being. Those needs need to be met that are not being met. You can be very happy. You can have great career. You can have great friends. You can have great family. And all you want is to be partnered. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be partnered. Absolutely nothing.
So COVID-19 can be used as an opportunity to build new friendships, new relationships, meet new people.
Yes.
Right. So if someone wants to seek the services of you as a therapist or some of the psychotherapist that works at Focus Counseling, how can they get in touch with you?
Sure. You can reach out to me at our website, focuscounselingclinic.com. You can reach out to me at jummyolawale.com. You can reach out to me through my email, jummyolawale@gmail.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Jummy Olawale, the therapist. I am also on Facebook, Jummy Olawale Therapy and Counseling. You can check me out in those places and reach out to me.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode of Legal Angle with Emmanuel the Law Olawale. God bless you.